Is Mack Rhoades too close to this football program?
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Bears fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by FanDuel and part of the number one podcast network in the world for sports. Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Cam Stuart of the Rogue Media Network. Appreciate you guys making it your first listen today and every day. Today, we will talk more about this Mack Rhoades situation because Dave Aranda has spoken on it for the first time. What is that relationship like? Is Mack Rhoades too close to this team? Is there an ultimatum within there that Dave Aranda could keep his job if Mack Rhoades is a little bit closer to this team? Plus, has this team been sabotaging themselves all year by not letting one of their best weapons run free? We'll talk about it. And basketball teams. Which one, Cam? Both of them turning heads after 1 week. What we have learned from the men's side and where the women are inside the top 10. All that and more coming up on this episode of Locked On Baylor. Of course, the big story around Baylor athletics the last few days has been the Friday evening news dump of the investigation that Baylor apparently did internally that was reported by Outkick first about these two incidents between Mack Rhoades and Michael Trigg, and one with Mack Rhoades and an unnamed assistant coach. It's a weird story. I talked about it with Drake yesterday on the crossover. I almost still don't know what to make of it because it's just so bizarre. Like, there's just no world and no profession where you just sweep it under the rug of like, oh yeah, well, it's just grabbed an employee by the neck. That's not a big deal. Emotions happen. Like, no, that's not good. And what he said to Michael Trigg, again, is it the worst thing that's ever been said on a football field? No, Lord knows that. But like, what are we doing? Why are we cussing out a player for wearing long sleeves under his pads? I don't get it. And the first couple of questions of Dave Aranda's weekly press conference naturally were about this. And, Bryce Cherry asked it first, like, Dave, what's the noise like around this? And he kind of downplays it. Hey, we're just focusing on a game here. And then Bryce gets a follow-up question. David Smoke gets a question in there of kind of holding the feet to the fire. Like, what is the deal with this? And what's your relationship like with Mack Rhoades? Here's what Dave Aranda had to say, the full two answers.
How's your relationship with Mack right now?
Yeah, Mack and I have always had a good relationship. We've always been open and always talked. Has always had free access to say what needs to be said. I've always appreciated that.
Should the AD be that much involved in anything prior to a game or after a game?
Yeah, I just think all of those questions, I understand the interest in them. Our focus is just trying to get ready to play a game. This is just a huge game for us. This is a game we need to win. We're in an instance where, similar to last year, we have to win all the rest of these games, and the focus needs to be on 1-0 today and 1-0 tomorrow and 1-0 the next day and stack those up so that we can get a 1-0 on Saturday night, And so very much for me the focus is that. And, I think all of these things as they play out will play out however they play out. But, we have to win this game and we have to play our best. This is a team that's embarrassed a fair amount of teams, and we're not looking to be that next team.
Well, this investigation is a little embarrassing. It's obviously not the worst thing that's ever happened, but it's a very odd distraction to come at this point in the season, especially when you see that it sounds like it was initiated by a player's family, which not going to criticize them for that. This is a weird thing, and they felt their son was, humiliated in front of his team. Michael Trigg, humiliated in front of his team, and certainly would have been the same thing for the unnamed assistant coach in front of a bunch of his players and his players' families and possibly even his own family. But I want to take what Dave said in the middle of that first answer, which was, Mack has easy access or all access, whatever he said there, to come in and say what needs to be said. It's an interesting way of putting it. Like, is that what needed to be said? One of your best players out there, Michael Trigg, is wearing a long sleeve shirt to cover up a brace to show that he's playing through an injury. And it just needs to be said, like, what the F are you doing? Was that what needed to be said? And it makes me think of, Dave essentially going to Mack 2 years ago before the last game with a binder and saying, here's why I should keep my job. And we've thought about it a lot this year, like looking back on it. And I said it at the time too. I wanted Dave fired at the time at the end of that 23 season. And looking back on it, it's like, man, how did he get away with that? Like, how did he not get fired after that 3-9 season? And it just makes me think, like, is there some sort of deal where Mack would get more access to this football program? Like, we know he's a bit of a fiery guy. We know he is a football first guy, as most athletic directors are. But like, to David Smoke's point and the follow-up question, like, should he be down there like before a game talking to players like that? I mean, like that, no, but like, what are we doing here? Like, it's so confusing. And I know that college football, more so than the NFL, has more blurred lines in terms of administration and how hands-on they're going to be, versus like a GM or an owner in the NFL. We kind of know what is couth and uncouth in the NFL, but in college, it's like, who knows? Some of these ADs used to be head coaches. Some of them are football specific. What kind of role does a GM have in college football? Can he be down there on the sidelines? Who knows, man? There's a lot more blurred lines when it comes to college football, but I think it is bizarre how this has played out. And all the former players and people who have been on college sidelines that I've talked to in the last few days have all said, yeah, that access is a little weird, And actually, I think who said it best was Terrence Ganaway, who was on the Matt Mosley show and is Scotty Swingler's co-host for Please Bear With Me through the Rogue Media Network. And he had said both times, he said, basically the word he said was, it's just inappropriate. Like, if you're an AD down there on the sideline, which is not uncommon, right? Some schools don't have that. Some schools do. Mack has pretty much always been that on the sideline. Like, that is to come down and say, hey, good luck, guys. What a play. Way to fight. That kind of thing. Not, hey, what the F are you doing? And I think the weirder part is the incident with the assistant coach outside of McLean Stadium, because not only was it a hand around the neck, which is wild, and in some cases, I mean, in most cases, fireable. Like, if that's true, that's fireable to potentially, choke an employee, I would say. But that one's weird because Dave Aranda is the head coach. Like, whatever should be happening with an assistant coach in terms of, talking to him after the game or any kind of non-physical discipline, like, that should be coming from the head coach. The university president doesn't go to a TA or a lab instructor and chew them out. The department head or the professor does. That's not the university president's job. This is the same thing. That's Dave Aranda's job, to deal with assistant coaches. That's why you hired him, and that's why you allow him to hire assistant coaches. That's not Mack Rhoades' job. And so I'm thinking, man, like, is this just too much hands-on that he's got that kind of access? I doubt we'll see him on the sideline the rest of the season. I think that would be odd if you do see him down there after all this, but like, I'm still not 100% sure what to make of this, but that quote about having the access is, I don't want to say damning, but I guess revealing in a lot of ways of, like, that's the term that he uses. I wonder if, having a coach who doesn't have a leg to stand on the last 2 seasons because he's lucky to have a job gives you automatically unfettered access to a football program if you're the AD. Allows you to walk in whenever you darn well please and apparently say whatever you darn well please. This is weird. It is weird, and I'm trying to think of the exact right word for it. Scandal seems a little strong, but it feels like things are kind of falling out of control again. It feels like this is a program that is very much not in control, and this is the most recent bizarre story of it, or bizarre example of it, I guess I should say. The good news is when things are really, really up against the wall and about to hit the fan, this team over the last season and a half has played its best football. So hopefully that translates on Saturday. But I am interested to hear what you guys have to say about this. Like, what is your prevailing thought over this Mack Rhoades thing? Is it a nothing burger? Do you think there's too much access here? Do you think it's a sign of the crumbling foundation of Baylor football? Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and of course, we come at you every weekday. We drop in the mornings on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts as well. If Baylor is going to come through with a big victory this weekend, a big upset over Utah, if they are to come through with it, they're going to need more from this player. A Bugatti they have basically kept in the garage the entire season. The kicker is he might also still be the best player on the team. Let's talk about it next on Locked On Baylor. First, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. It's the only place that I go to buy my tickets. And with the last month of the real college football season upon us, when everyone's playing, you don't want to miss out on it. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually, getting tickets is more of a hassle than the game itself. The queues, the hidden fees, the prices jumping at checkout. We don't need it. That's why I use Game Time. It's the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I got to go to the oldest indoor sports arena in this great country last weekend. I bought tickets a half hour before, $20. Game Time. Knew exactly what my view was going to look like from the seats before I even got there. I can pull it up right now, and in a couple of taps, I can get you all the amazing deals you're thinking of. And they're going to tell you it's an amazing deal. I'm talking like being able to see the Baylor Bears this weekend for under $30. That's how great this is. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College, for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time and the Game Time app today. Coming back here on Locked On Baylor as the Bears come out of a bye week and now are looking to take on what could be their best opponent of the season so far, which we've said a couple of times, right? Especially between the last bye week and now. You know, SMU's playing good football. They just went BTA to one of the worst college football teams in the Power Four at BC. They're 7-3. Cincinnati doesn't look as strong as they did when they beat Baylor. TCU doesn't look as strong as they did when they beat Baylor. And that leaves Utah, your next opponent. You're going to need something special to beat Utah. That would be a big-time upset. And it's not impossible, but you are going to need a near-perfect game when you talk about the way that Baylor's been playing the last couple of weeks and really this whole season. It's going to need to be nearly flawless to beat them. And one thing that really worked for them before the bye week and that homecoming win over UCF was Sawyer Robertson. Wow. Shocking news there. Sawyer Robertson plays well, Baylor wins. No kidding. Even when they lose sometimes when he plays really well. He needs to play very well in order for Baylor to even have a chance to win. But for the first time all season, the second time all season, those being in the last 2 weeks, Sawyer Robertson had positive rushing yards against UCF. Hold the phone. He had positive rushing yards, and Baylor won a football game. It's something we haven't seen at all this year until the last 2 weeks, and we still don't see any design runs for him. So while the passing numbers are still great, even better than they were in a really good passing season last year, why haven't they let him out of the pocket more? Dave Aranda talks about how important that is.
I think anytime that there can be 5 guys out in the route And whether it's a horizontal stretch or a vertical one, the pass rush lanes are tested when the quarterback can scramble. And we were able to, the 5 or 4 yards that he gets can make it an easier third or fourth down. And that showed up in this last game. And, the team we're about to play plays a ton of man coverage. And so generally guys are going to be close together and stuck on one another. And, the ability to get separation is always a challenge. And so to elongate a thing and to kind of create more time, the scrambling to throw or the scrambling to run if guys' backs are turned is always a thing.
It's one of the elements of this Baylor football season I have not talked nearly enough about on this show, but it's crazy how little Baylor's run the quarterback this year. Like, it's nuts. And I know the offense, statistically, right, the offense is still cooking. It's still a top 5 offense in college football when you look at the pure numbers of it, scoring, yards, all that great stuff. The EPA is not top 5. And that's indicative of, the fact that they have to go for it on 4th down so much and that they leave a lot of points on the field. And a big reason why they leave more points on the field this year than they did last year, especially the back half of last year, is because they're not running the football effectively. Dawson Pendergrass out for the year before a snap was even taken. Bryson Washington banged up all year. Behind him, you got a bunch of freshmen who have stepped in admirably. This is not a diss on them. But they have not run the football effectively all year. And they had a quarterback who ran for 230 last year, basically all in the final, 4 of the final 5 games of the season. He went 3 positive games and then 3 negative games rushing wise. And for some reason since then, they just don't let him out of the pocket. Like, since he had 78 rushing yards in a game against Oklahoma State last year, they just keep him in the pocket all the time. And I get it. That's where he is the most effective. But when you've got a team that leaves points on the board all the time because they don't punt and they turn the ball over a lot, you got to think you're going to set yourself in easier situations if you're good at running the ball. And they're not. And they've got a good running quarterback and they don't let him spin. And behind him, I don't know how many spots behind him. You've got a guy you brought in through the transfer portal who already used his red shirt and I guess could use one again. I don't know the exact rules of this. But Walker White was one of the best mobile quarterbacks in the country in high school. Like, there's no situation where he could come in and run for you a little bit. It sounds crazy because you're taking the ball out of your best player's hands, but I just would have thought that with this team desperate for wins and with as good an offensive coordinator as Jake Spavital is, they would have found other more creative ways to run the ball. 2 years ago, it was running jet sweeps to Monterey Baldwin. Sometimes it worked. A lot of times it didn't because you weren't very solid on the offensive line at all. But now it's just, we can't run the ball. Too bad. We just won't. We just won't do it. And here you have Dave Aranda telling you exactly how well it can work, exactly when it can work. Utah is not the first team they faced this season that plays man defense. Okay? They're not the first ones. And it is crazy to think, here's a guy who was in the negative rushing yards up till last week after being such an effective runner last year. 4 rushing touchdowns last year. And this year he's got 13 yards. Why are we doing that? It's infuriating. And I know we've been over this part, but there's so many games that we could have pointed to these key plays where you're like, Sawyer, there's nothing there. Just go. Look at the space in front of you. You ran 4 guys down the field. Just go. Take off. Clearly, that's not a part of their game plan. Even though Dave Aranda is telling you, he's pretty good at it. It's pretty effective. It's infuriating. You've got a good runner back there. You haven't run the ball effectively all season. You've got a good runner. You're just not using him. And I'm not saying Sawyer needs to run it 2 times every set of downs. I'm not saying that. But there's 3 or 4 times every game where you're like, man, there's nothing on this play. He should just take off. And he doesn't. And I got to imagine that's a directive of you're best when you are a passer. You are our most effective weapon when you are throwing the football, and anything else comes behind that. How important is that for a game this weekend? How important is that for Baylor to win games the rest of the season? Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe. When we come back, we're going to take it to the hardwood a little bit. It has been a uber positive start for both the men's and the women's team. We'll tell you what's been the best part coming up next on Locked On Baylor. But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, my source of passive income on the weekends. It can be yours too. The NBA is back. There's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. If you miss the start of the game and you still want to hop in there, ride the hot hand, use your instincts, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who's going to score the next bucket to those fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at an even bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push and you can see it right there, objects in the rearview mirror, maybe closer than they appear. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, it is basketball season. And depending on how this game goes against Utah on Saturday, it might fully be basketball season here at Baylor. And it's been a combined 4-0 start for the men's and women's teams. Of course, the ladies, they got the big win of the season so far, top 10 upset over Duke. And so now they move into the top 10 themselves. How about your number 7 Baylor women's basketball team? It's been exciting so far. They've certainly got a lot of talent. I'm a tad bit worried about the depth on that team. I said it after game 1, especially when you're working a couple of players back to full health. Gianna Van Geitenbeek, Dariana Little-Page Bugs, who have given you good minutes so far. But that does become a bit of a concern down the line. Talia Scott, great again over the weekend. Nice little gut check victory at the Foster Pavilion for the team formerly known as the Lady Bears, and they moved themselves into the top 10. The men get an impressive win on Sunday night. Foster after dark over what is a talented Washington team. Okay, there's not much that we know about them, but again, they got USC's top 2 scorers, and that doesn't include either of their big guys who are both like getting some preseason all Big Ten buzz. Wesley Yates, that might have been a name you remembered. He played high school in Beaumont. Actually, Baylor was one of the last schools on the board. And I think he actually ended up committing to Washington and then went to USC and then back to Washington. I don't know, but that's a decent basketball team up there. That is not your slightly older brother's Washington team, which was bad. This was a pretty good, solid Washington team, and Baylor, it was a back and forth game, but I mean led most of the night, right? They didn't feel in trouble at any point in that game. I think there was a lot better buy-in defensively than there was in game 1. And I got to tell you who I'm most impressed with. A guy I was very skeptical of making a jump from a smaller conference to the Big 12 and how much he was going to be needed in this Baylor system this year, needed even more so after the injury to Jocelyn Bodo. And that's the Waco kid himself, Caden Powell. What a game that kid had. I mean, that is a good, solid basketball player right there. He's coming off the bench and gives you a double-double. And he just didn't put a foot wrong the whole night, man. I mean, every time it just like if you grow up, like if you were watching that game with a JV high school basketball coach, they would tell you that Caden Powell is their favorite player on the floor. And I am the closest thing to a JV basketball coach without being a JV basketball coach. But like seriously, man, he set good screens and then he rolled to the basket right afterwards. Like that's a guy who just has a nose for the paint, knows where he needs to be. He's not one of these 2025 big guys that's going to be out there shooting threes, which I love. I just love guys. And by the way, Washington had a couple of those guys too. Like just guys who understand that they can still play what is now seen as an old school basketball role and help their team. And Caden Powell was certainly that on Sunday night, man. He just gave you everything you could have asked for, and all these guys gave great efforts. I'm interested to see in this non-conference schedule how much Baylor can win without getting big contributions from Obi Agbem. I think a lot of us thought he would be the engine for this Baylor offense, and it wasn't necessarily there in the preseason. In the scrimmages, we had heard some rough numbers there, and it hasn't necessarily translated through the first two games either. He was 1 for 7 from the floor, turned the ball over 3 times, but did dish out 7 assists. So is that what he can be? Can he be more of a facilitator than a combo guard? Because that's really what he was. He was a combo guard before that when he was playing at Wyoming. You got another positive game from Cam Carr. Dan Skillings was good. Mikey Ratai, good start to the game. Kind of went invisible for a good chunk of it. He played the least amount of minutes of any of the starters. He only played 24. But Caden Powell was your guy off the bench, man, and that might have been why Ratai was on the bench a little bit more. 12 and 10 with a couple of blocks. Contested everything, rolled on everything. Like that was a very, very positive performance from Caden Powell. And of course, we'll hear about it, see it all season long, but his mom's going to be at all those. Teaching at the Baylor Law School. She was loving it. They showed her a couple of times on TV there. But good bench contributions, which, like kind of said with the women's team, I'm a little bit concerned about this with this Bears team. It's a very small rotation. You're only going to see 3 guys coming off the bench, and 2 of the 3 that came off the bench scored 12 points each. So 3 guys, 24 points. They each average 8 off the bench. JJ White just had 0. That was a good win. Again, I know Washington's not going to win the Big Ten or anything, but that's a good win. That was an early test against a talented Power 4 team when you have a completely new roster, and it looked pretty good. And I think what a lot of people are going to like about this team, if you were frustrated with the team last year, is that A, you're clearly seeing some buy-in on the defensive side, and B, they're not going to be a 3-point shooting team. They're not going to be. And I'm very interested to see how well Baylor can compete in the Big 12 while not being the most talented, but having good buy-in on the defensive end and not being a chuck up, 33s a game kind of team. There were 6 of 21 in this game. Washington just happened to be 3 of 20. So they need to get better at the free throw line. They still need to improve a little bit more on the glass. I think they gave up, 16 offensive rebounds to Washington. That's not going to win you a lot of Big 12 games. But I do like the style of team that we're seeing so far. So look out. They're getting votes this week. Let me know what you think about these basketball teams in the comment section below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. It's completely free. Helps me keep my job. And we will come back to you tomorrow on the #1 sports network in the world for podcasts anyway. It'll be a Wicker Wednesday. We will see you then. Thank you so much for making it your first listen today and every day. And happy Veterans Day. God, I should have led with that. I can't get out of here without saying happy Veterans Day. And take a moment to appreciate and thank the veterans in your life. They don't get thanked enough in all likelihood for being out there, and for some, obviously, more for Memorial Day, but making the ultimate sacrifice. So thank you so much to our veterans that watch and listen to the show as well. You are appreciated. Happy Veterans Day to all of you out there, and we will see you tomorrow on Locked On Baylor.